Welcome to the Feudal Anime Podcast. I'm your host, Jack.
And I'm Rick.
And today we're talking about the Asterisk War. This was your choice, and we decided to break this one up as well into two parts because it did come out a year apart, Season 1, Season 2, so I thought it'd be better and do it a little bit of a justice in taking a look at Season 1 individually and then Season 2 instead of combining them together.
Now, what I noticed is I'm apparently leaning towards a specific genre of swordsman, underdog, and
Harem and Ecchi.
Ecchi might be pushing it a little bit as far as like what I would typically enjoy watching. Harem, I find it to be funny simply because there's no way it could ever happen in real life in this way. No one's going to be not only that oblivious, but like that just, it's called fantasy for a reason. But the guy's always got an ulterior motive that seems a little bit off, but nobody ever questions.
Well, he is a little bit off.
Yeah.
Like, day one, Ayato is a little bit off. And he
oblivious.
Is very, very oblivious to everything that goes on. So this one, it has 5 main characters, 4 female, 1 male, and Ayato is the main male protagonist. One of the other main characters that he first runs across in the first 10 seconds of the show is Julius. And he sees a handkerchief falling down and he grabs it and he sees an open window and says, yes, this is a great idea. Let me jump up there and just return this to the person. So he does and sees Julius undressing. Like she's standing there in
all of her glory.
Yeah, just in her undies, as if that's not a big deal at all.
Yeah.
And then, she obviously acts a little bit shy.
Well, I just thought it was funny because I thought this particular part was funny because her first reaction isn't, oh my God, there's a man in my window. It's, hey, you have to turn around. In my head, I'm like, the dude's in the windowsill. If he turns around, he's going to fall out. But no.
Obviously, that doesn't matter. I mean, like, if he got up there with ease, he could obviously turn around and just get the hell out.
It's kind of funny because she's on the 5th, 6th floor, and dude jumps up there like it's nobody's business. He's like, oh, yeah, this is just, one small step for man, one giant leap for any high schooler. It's an open window. Obviously, there's going to be a naked chick behind it.
Yeah. So the backstory is there was a catastrophe known as Inertia that changed the actual power balances in the world. So the governments and monarchies and things like that, as we know it, really aren't there in that respect. There was this federation or group of people known as the Integrated Enterprises Foundation, and they came into power, and then along with this massive change, new people were being born with great physical, magical, I guess you could say, abilities, and they're called Genestella, I believe.
That's better than what I was going to say. I was just going to say Jen, because I wasn't even going to try to butcher that name. In my mind, it goes with the concept of genetically engineered. That's why I was going to say Jen.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be surprised if they were genetically engineered and then they're just breeding other genetically engineered individuals on top of that. So, with that in mind, they go to a island school where there are, or an island, a water island designed and built for them, where there are 6 different schools, and being a part of a daily battle where you literally will break out into a duel at any point in time, from pissing someone off or just for kicks and giggles or whatever, is a daily life. It's how it's supposed to be. And I don't even understand why. Like, what's the point of just like, hey, let's just fight. All right, woo!
It almost is like you have a school full of either nerds, thugs, or hooligans. And might makes right is what appears to be the name of the order. Because the strongest one, ranked number 1, there's always a ranking system that is publicized. And the higher rank you are, the more respect you garner.
Even if you don't really deserve that respect. And it's It's not always like the school president or something like that, because they still have normal elections and things like and things like that for the schools, but that doesn't mean they get as much respect as, say, a 13-year-old who is undefeated amongst everyone.
Who actually happens to be ranked number one.
Exactly.
The funny thing is, she loses, and an unranked person, the main character,
Ayato.
um, Ayato, defeats her, and he assumes mantle of rank one. Why everyone just doesn't go for number one all the time, I don't know.
It's because if you're number one, you're obviously crazy powerful, and you need to be. And they even said that Saya, the person who was previously no, sorry, not Saya, Kirin, who was previously ranked number one, was undefeated, just like another one of the main characters, Claudia, who is the school's president. She's also, or like Kirin was, Claudio is undefeated. And so those two were the number one and number two positions. Kirin is number one, Claudia is number two. Well, when Ayato battles Kirin legitimately a second time, because the first time he ran into her, he was preventing her uncle from slapping her because he said it wasn't right, which I agree. You know, it's a very chivalrous thing to do. You should, if you see something like that going on, you should say something. But
See something, say something.
exactly. And so she finally breaks ties with her uncle and says, I don't need you anymore. I have Ayato, who's been there for me, who's helping me train and be a better person in general. And so they fight, and Ayato actually wins. Now, he doesn't win in a sword fight. He uses his full knowledge of weapons. So he uses daggers, he uses spears, he uses a short sword, and he also does grappling. And those are his specialties. He knows how to do all those offensive techniques because of his training. Now, one thing that is explained about 3-4 episodes into it, Ayato, he's actually very restricted in the amount of power he can use. He can't go full power because of his sister. And his sister, you see at the very beginning, die. Now, you don't know it's her at the beginning. It's not known that is his sister right away, but she does die, and you're able to kind of piece together that they were brother and sister. And now it's 5 years later. He's at that school trying to find what happened to her.
See, now I'm gonna have to disagree. I don't think she's dead because this is anime. You see people lose copious amounts of blood and still survive like nothing happened.
Right, but
So I
her
think she was
glasses,
just
if you
her glass.
yeah, her
What?
glasses were still laying there on the ground. And during the final battle, you even see that she is probably a part. Now, not technically dead in the sense that we know dead, but maybe she's metaphorically dead in the sense that she is now a part of this legendary weapon that Ayato is using because she was the one that was using it beforehand.
See, I didn't think that. Maybe you and I took away something a little different. I was under the impression that the weapon that Ioto is using, the one that chose him, in the it's not even a choosing ceremony. I think they call it an ogre lux. They're very special weapons that can't be used by everyone. You have to be compatible with them. They have their own personalities and their own, I'm not going to say desires, but kind of. His sister used a very specific ogre lux, and I think her combat memory, meaning these are really advanced computer-like weapons that use your own, I'm going to say spiritual energy. They call it prana. I don't see a difference to power this weapon. And while his sister was using it, I would say that the weapon simply logged that it was used, and not necessarily against whom or in what manner, but it logged that it had combat use in the similar sense that you can tell if a gun has been fired.
Yeah, but they do specify that they have personalities of their own desires and wants. And Claudia even states this
Yes.
in episode 11. So it's not that
Yes.
they're completely oblivious to the world around them. They're able to do what they want to do in a manner of sense. So like during episode 12, the last episode of season 1, you learn that Irene is using a specific Ogre Lux, that scythe, that literally turns you into a vampire. The power
Yeah,
of
it
that
does.
Ogre Lux is gravity, but it drains your blood in order to give it power. And how you gain more power is to drink blood from others.
Yes. And, I mean, I can't say you're wrong in the fact that everything you said was true. I don't agree with the part where it's its own entity, to
They
where
even stated they even
they
stated that.
stated they stated they have their own personalities. Yes,
Yeah,
but
and they
that
can
would indicate
choose
their
who they want to be compatible with. So like Ayato is only compatible with his specific Ogre Lux when he's at full power. That's when it acknowledges him, and they state that several times. That's when it acknowledges my power. That's when it wants to work with me, is when I'm at this point. And when Irene is unconscious, Ayato even says, I don't think that's Irene anymore. I think that's her Ogre Lux. And the Ogre Lux was the one that was actually attacking it, and you can see it in the eyes, and she kept trying to come back. But they kept stating every time someone had an Ogre Lux, it's the Ogre Lux that's actually doing it. It's not the individual. And same thing with Claudia. Claudia was asleep, but her Ogre Lux forces her to relive her death every night when she goes to sleep. And they forced her to attack Ayato. He was able to bring her out of it. He was able to wake her up. But again, every single one of them have a personality of their own. They have their own, their wants, their desires. And if pushed to an extreme, will even move and attack on their own, like they did when they were first introducing the Ogre Luxes in episode 2.
when it was being attacked. Yeah, no, I get that part, but the only thing I can even combat that with, because what you said technically is true. What are Ogre Luxes made out of? The way I interpreted what they said was it's simply a tool used very similarly to a computer program, which is why you're able to plug it into other things and view its history, essentially.
They never specify how an Ogre Lux is actually created. Like, at all. They never specify it. They go into detail to the extent of, for the first time in a long time, we are going to try and create our own Ogre Lux. Now, that's it. That's the only thing that's actually ever really gone in depth about them. Other than the fact that they have their own personalities, they have their own desires and wants. They will change the user to suit their needs, that they can affect the user in ways that you couldn't even imagine, and that this is the first time in a long time that someone's going to try and create one. And every school has their own. That's the other thing. Every school has their own specific set of Ogre Luxes.
I don't know. I just, while I agree with what you're saying, I don't think it's right. I know that's contradictory. It's just, we're going to have to agree that we believe different things that was presented to us, because I can't get past the point where they said, well, it's logged, the weapon Ogre Lux that Ayato has logged combat experience prior to him, but they don't have anybody checking it out. Like, that has been wiped from the record.
Yeah,
so
no,
how do you see that record from the weapon itself?
No, what they're saying is they have it logged that it does have experience. Yes, and they can see when a weapon has been used. But what I'm saying is all those records are deleted, not necessarily by the Ogre Lux, but by someone else of a different entity. And
the school record was deleted by somebody else. I agree with that. What you were saying was that the Ogre Lux that he's using, at least from what I remember, you said, somehow absorbed his sister.
Right. Exactly. Because during the final battle, you see his sister's eye and part of her face in the gem of the Ogre Lux.
Oh, okay. I see what you're talking about. The way I interpreted that was not in the Ogre Lux. It was a reflection. I saw that as a reflection. I didn't see her as being sucked in. I think that's where you and I are diverging from what we saw.
Right. Well, I think that she, because of how Ogre Luxes are, and this is why I was explaining the differences into each one, is because I think that when she was dying, she became a part of the Ogre Lux.
Okay. Okay. So in the same sense of when Ayato merged his Frana into the sword and it grew, and you think that similarly, when she was dying, she merged herself with the sword
Correct.
to try to make it stronger, to like, what
Because
do you think was the point in
she
that?
knew that Ayato would come and find it, that he would come and look for her. Because at that point, when she is looking out of the gem and there's that connection, you see the little prism effect that they show numerous times, showing that he is restrained and bound by her abilities. You see it all of a sudden turn green and a new one appear, which shows that it's unlocking his full power completely for that little extra step.
Okay. Okay. When you explain it like that, when you see it like that, I can kind of sort of follow. I still can't agree completely, but I see where that train of thought led you to. So, okay, yeah, let's go down that pathway. He mentions when he unlocks his ability that he is a sword that's sheathed inside himself. He does this whole chant that unlocks his ability. Do you think that the sword that he has sheathed is the Ogre Lux opening his
No.
chains? No,
No,
you don't.
he's able to unlock his full potential without having to use the Ogre Lux. He even says that the Ogre Lux doesn't acknowledge him unless he has his power unlocked all the way. And one of his friends, Saya, even references to Julie's right after their first battle. She said to Julie's, saying, if he was fighting seriously, if Ayato was fighting seriously against you, you would not be here.
See, I understand that and I agree with that. But do you remember when the sword chose, I'm saying that in quotation, him the very first time when it was being tested by somebody else and then it attacked Ayato?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't unlock anything. At least he didn't go through the sequence that
he
he
says a
typically
chant.
would have.
Well, he usually says chant or something like that when he's about to attack or when he's about to do a move. Just because
When
he's
he
not
unlocks it.
right. But
Well,
just
every other time that he unlocks it.
No, not every other time. He doesn't always say a chant when he unlocks it. Additionally,
Well, what I was going to say was, go ahead.
Go ahead.
What I was going to say was, every time he unlocks his stuff, you see the chains come off of him.
Not necessarily true again.
When is another time you see that where he doesn't take the chains off and he's at full power?
75% of the battles actually when he's fighting the last battle with Irene, you don't see chains coming off there. He doesn't do a special chant to remove those said chains either. If I remember correctly, you just see him power up even more at that point. Yes, they show it symbolically for most of the fights, but they don't show it for every single one of them. And again, it goes back to what was originally stated. He even said beforehand that 5 minutes is the most he's actually ever been able to go before.
Yeah, he did mention that. So yeah, I will concede the fact that he doesn't need the Ogre Lux to open the chain or to take the chains off.
And so that's why Saya said, if he was fighting at full power, you wouldn't be here, because he wasn't taking it seriously. And even Jules, during the first battle, when she was fighting him in the first episode, she even says, I don't think he's, she acknowledges that he's not really taking it seriously because she's fighting full force and he's just like effortlessly moving around her attacks.
Dodging most of it.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it. I like it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I definitely like it.
Well, I mean, are you going to argue with the people that are saying that that is what it is? Like that he is, fighting restrained or doesn't always unlock his full potential?
Well, no, I believe he does fight restrained, and I believe that he doesn't always unlock his full potential. I just, for some reason, can't get past the thing where I think in order for him to use his full potential, you have to kind of see him have the chains taken off, you know?
Yeah, I get it. I mean, like, would you argue that he fought at full strength with Kirin, who when he took the number one spot?
Uh,
I mean, like, you didn't see the chains get released there,
yeah,
and yet he was able to take her down easily.
I don't think so. Only because he wasn't using the Ogre Lux. He was using a regular sword and he took her down with technique, not power.
Right, but unlocking his full potential allows him to move at said greater speed and with more power and a better form of technique. So it amplifies everything for him because he's not fighting restrained.
I can see where you would go with that.
I'm just saying. You
No,
said
it's a good argument.
He has to fight unrestrained, and that's the only way he does it. If he didn't fight unrestrained against someone who is far superior to him in that regard, and he usually will have to fight unrestrained if he's fighting someone of a superior style and fight power. I mean, like, doesn't that make sense? I mean, like, she was in a sense a superior fighter when it came to one particular technique.
See, I would argue that the very first fight where he lost and he wasn't fighting seriously because he could not cross swords. And then he was running out of time, obviously, as you saw. The second time, he was able to cross swords, which means he was, in my head, able to fight a different way. And he named way more techniques, and he recognized more techniques from her. So that's why I was thinking he didn't unlock his full potential. He just went at her via technique over power. Because I think if he were to power up, yeah, he could kick her butt no problem. Because there's very few people who can actually, in this anime, actually get him at his age.
See, and that's a great assumption. That is a great assumption. But if he didn't fight at full power, who's to say he would have won against her for sheer technique? Because her technique was obviously it was great. There's no reason to deny it.
I'm not trying to take anything away. She's a master at what she does. She spent most of her life, if not all of her life, focusing on this one technique, this one sword style. And in his own right, he is a master of his sword style. He's probably the last of his line too. But the fact that he was able to recognize her attack patterns and her attack strategy indicates that he's much more learned in swordsmanship, let's call it, than you originally believe. Because he's not a master of just his own, but he's familiar with hers from the get-go.
No, he recognizes it because of how famous her sword style is. And he makes that comment about it. He goes, yeah, no, I know about your sword style because of how famous and world-renowned it is. And they said it's almost similar to like origami, I believe is what he said. It's similar to the folding crane origami.
Okay, yeah. And that is what she does. The style she uses, it was quite awesome because when she's fighting, she actually explains that, well, you see the patterns she makes in the air before she actually attacks. So,
well, it's not that before she attacks. It's what she does is she explains those succession, and what it is, it's actually 48 moves chained together that are supposed to be unblockable / undodgeable to make her attack almost invincible, so to speak. And he even says this, and she confirms with his suspicions after he's able to almost completely dodge or defend against them all, with the exception of the graze on the side from him being able to have a barrier up to protect himself. She says it's 48 different moves conjoined together in succession to make this almost an invincible move, and she says this several times, or not several times, but she says this, and then she names the different types of moves and movements.
Okay, yeah, I remember that. Well, I mean, I've been wrong before.
We all have, sir. We all have. But and honestly, and it's, I understand that it sounds like we're focusing a lot on the beginning and maybe a couple parts in the middle and then the end, but that's where a majority of it really happens. That's where a majority of it really takes hold. Now you have a couple spots in the in between points where it's setting it up for season 2. So it's
Oh yeah.
We'll discuss those then, but it's honestly because the details that they give and the amount of in-depthness that they did, it's just not there. It's not. We'll reference it, but then we would be having to immediately move past that referencing because there's not enough detail.
It's almost embarrassing how hard they were pushing season 2.
Yes.
Like in the last 3, I want to say, episodes of the first season, they're like, oh, but this twist, I feel like there's more. There's so much more to come. I mean, I what are we going to do? There's so much more. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess there's more.
And it's interesting too, as well, that they show other characters as like other people that could be key players, and then they immediately move past that. And it's aggravating, in all honesty. It's like, okay, why are you showing me this, or why are you referencing this if you're not going to talk to me about this? Why are you not going to go into the detail about this? But at the same time, they do actually have a season 2. Sure, it came out a year after season 1.
It's only a little behind.
And it's also only 12 episodes long.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's better than not doing it at all, you know?
It is. It is a lot better than not doing it at all. I agree with you on that.
I've come across anime that were very, very remiss. They're like, season 2 coming, never.
Yeah, well, you know, they do have a lot out there where they actually go through and say, hey, you know, check us out for season 2 next year. And it's like 3 years later, it's like, well, where's season 2? You said it was coming out 2 years ago.
No Game, No Life is a prime example of that.
Yes.
Hopefully we get to review that one day.
Maybe someday in the future. We'll see. But I think this is a great spot for us to kind of wrap it up with a rating, sir. So how would you rate season 1?
Season 1, I already like the genre, so I'm real biased. I'm gonna have to go with 3.5. They could have done better. Could have really done better as far as the lead up goes. But yeah, 3.5. What about you?
I'm going to need to give it a 3.25. And the reason why I'm giving it a 3.25 is because of the lack of detail for the things that they kept throwing in there. It was playing a little too hard, in the sense that, hey, we're going to have a season 2. Now, thankfully they did, but it played too hard into that, and I felt like they were throwing things in there that could have been left out while they focused on other details instead.
I see what you mean.
But luckily, we do have a season 2, and so maybe my opinion overall will change. Hopefully, it gives it a nice rounded ending. I am interested to see how it's all going to play out, whether or not he finds out what truly happens to his sister, and everything else may or may not be really revealed in the second season. And I may have to read the light novel, which is what it's based on.
I'm going to let you do that, because that's not something I don't like reading, especially with anime.
I think that's about it for today. So yeah, next week's going to be part 2 of the Asterisk War. Please feel free to reach out to us at thefeudalanemepodcast@gmail.com if you've seen the Asterisk War or any of the other animes that we have talked about. Or you can reach out to us also on the Twitterverse. You can reach out to us at Feudal Anime Pod. Until next time.
I'm Rick.
And I'm Jack.
Later.
Later.